We're studying IGCSE biology and we're starting humans and the environment 3. Let's recap what we did in the last class. Amina, what did we do? Quick.
Yes, we did global warming, the process, the negative effects, the greenhouse gases, and then we also did catalytic converter and then acetylene.
Acetylene. So
Yeah.
catalytic converter, that must mean nitrogen oxides. That's it's fine. Now today we're going to continue that and look at more pollution. All the pollution human cause and love to cause, right? And we'll also look at how to make it better for them. So nitrogen oxides and catalytic converter. Fine. But today, let's see. The agenda or the objective, as the boarding word for agenda is, we'll do eutrophication, natural disasters, and we'll also look at conservation. How can we correct the mistakes of humanity? Now look at the book on your notebook, on the screen. Can you see it? Amina,
No.
can you see the book? Just a second. I think it's loading. Zoom is taking some time. Now can you see it?
Yes, sir.
No.
Perfect. So we finished right here. I do remember. That's good. Eutrophication. Now, Ayan, start reading from here.
Many organisms live in water. They are called aquatic organisms. Aquatic habitats include fresh water, such as streams, rivers, ponds, and lakes, and also marine environments, the sea and oceans. Most organisms that live in water respire aerobically and so need oxygen. They obtain their oxygen from oxygen gas, which is dissolved in the water. Anything which reduces the amount of oxygen available in the water can make it impossible for the fish or other aquatic organisms to live there.
All right. Now we realize from this that fish get their oxygen from the water because they have gills, and that's where they get their oxygen from. Fine. And all the other organisms as well. Crustaceans have book lungs, which also get their oxygen from in the same way. Now, our job is to look at what can make that a problem. How can it be a problem for the fish to not get enough oxygen for their proper growth and survival? How does that happen? One big thing is fertilizers and also sewage. Sewage is, well, obvious because you shouldn't put sewage into the river. But how are fertilizers affecting all of this? That's a big question. So let's see right here. Eutrophication. Start writing. Now eutrophication is, let's start from here. First thing first. What does eutrophication mean? Eutrophication basically is related to when plants, or let's just say when plants and aquatic animals die as a result of abundance of nutrients. Now, how's that a thing? How can you die of abundance of nutrients? Well, because the plants are getting the it's not the animals which are getting the nutrients. Someone else is. Those guys are called algae. Algae, however you want to call it. And this process is also called algal bloom. So start writing this. Let's rephrase it quite a bit. As a result of, all right, algal bloom due to abundance of nutrients. Now that's just a brief definition of it. We look at the proper how does it happen. Now how it happens is we have a few steps happening. Fertilizers are put into the soil. Fine. Then what happens? The next thing that happens is, and these fertilizers have nitrates in them. So we know one thing about nitrates, that nitrates are highly soluble. Nitrates are highly soluble. In chemistry, we'll realize that nitrates are the only ion and potassium and all of them, which are very soluble. If you put them in water, with any cation, you can have any kind of metal as a cation, but they will still dissolve. Any salt with nitrate dissolves. So highly soluble. Next thing that happens is, due to rain, or let's say, we'll just say these these fertilizers, let's just say fertilizers, leach into rivers. Because of rain. The next thing is we look at what happens after that. Well, because of these fertilizers, algae bloom happens. Plants get a lot of nutrients and grow exponentially. Keep writing. And finally, what happens is, because then these algae block sunlight. That's one thing. And use up all the oxygen. So actually write this like this. Block sunlight and kill plants underneath, or let's say underwater. 5 is they use up all oxygen and kill aquatic animals. Any questions, Amina?
No.
Ayan, read from the beginning. Keep writing as well.
After
So
you.
just a second. There's a mistake right here. It's by they over here I mean bacteria. Bacteria decompose dead plants and use up all the oxygen and kill, which kills aquatic animals. Yes, I am read now. Out loud.
Fertilizer with nitrates are put in soil. Nitrates are highly soluble. Due to rain, fertilizers leach into rivers. Algae bloom happens. Plants get a lot of nutrient and grow/reproduce exponentially. These algae block sunlight and kill plants underwater. Bacteria decompose dead plants and use up all the oxygen, which kills aquatic animals.
Aquatic animals, this whole thing is called oxygen starvation. Let's say this is called oxygen starvation. Kill aquatic animals by oxygen starvation. There's nothing more you need to, if you can memorize these 5 points because of in this, then everything is done. Finish writing, tell me when you're done. I'll just give you a diagram right here. So we have, let's say, a water body right here. So let's make some land. So this, let's say, is my land. So tell me when you're done. Amina, how much have you finished?
I'm done.
Answer.
Now we'll just look at this land. We have these. Imagine the orange part is the soil and the green part is your boundary to the river. Now the river is right here. Fine. What happens is when I put ions right here, let's say these yellow ions, there's a crop right here, and I put the fertilizer there. But what happens is slowly when rainwater comes over here from the top, It takes all of these guys into the water. Now what happens is when these guys come into the water, oh, there's some algae already there. We know seaweed, right? Seaweed are algae. I'll show you the diagram for that. If you look at this image, can you see the green stuff here?
Yeah.
Now these are called algae. Look at this one. These are called algae. What happens is because of these leaching, this happens. Now after that, what happens is if I have other plants and underneath this, some plants, because the sunlight can't reach them, what will happen is these plants will die. So the sunlight from the sun can't reach them. Sunlight is here, and these get bounced off, or they use up all the sunlight. So no sunlight here. Now they die. Okay, fine. What happens after that? The bacteria in the soil, they decompose this guy, not in the soil, in the water. And what happens after that is because these bacteria respire aerobically, they use up all the oxygen. So they take all the O2 from the water, is taken by the bacteria. So the fish right here is like, well, I don't have any oxygen. So how will I survive? They try to survive, but they die because ultimately they need oxygen as a vital nutrient to survive. These guys also die, and that whole thing is called eutrophication. Any doubts? Ayan, Amina, doubts? Now I want you to
No,
put
sir.
one word here. Put the word bacteria decompose that causes oxygen, which just put the word right here, add it by aerobic respiration. Now, it's not going to be asked in the theory papers. If you don't mention it, it's fine. But in MCQ, they're usually going to ask you, how did the algae respire, or what causes the lack of oxygen? You'll have to say aerobic respiration by bacteria, not in aerobic or anaerobic. Next thing is conversation, not conversation, conservation. So start from here. Any questions? I'm gonna read pesticides.
Okay. A pesticide is a substance that kills organisms which damage crops. Insects that eat crops can be killed with in insecticides. Fungi that grow on crops are controlled with fungicides. Weeds that compete with crop plants for water, light, and minerals can be controlled with herbicides. Pesticides may also be used to control organisms which transmit disease, such as mosquitoes. We have seen that insects or fungi which can feed on a monoculture have an almost inexhaustible food supply. The usual limit on their population growth do not apply. The populations of the insect or fungi may grow very rapidly until they are so big that they cause extensive damage to the crop.
All right. So what happens is if you give a lot of food to people who want food, they're going to reproduce, and you'll have a lot of them. That will be a big problem because usually in nature they don't have this much food. But since farming is artificial, you're bringing, and monoculture is obviously artificial because in no way will you find in a forest randomly hundreds of acres of the same crop, right? That's completely artificial. Now that is a big problem of monoculture, that if you have a pest, they can multiply rapidly and kill all the crops. Now one thing is, well, that's fine. But what other? So to stop these uh, pests and weeds and these diseases that is caused by monoculture, instead of instead of removing monoculture, we brought other solutions, other chemical solutions. And the word chemical is a big problem here because chemicals are not properly tested. And right now, research as we speak is being done and finding lots and lots of defects causing chemicals which are in the water. You'll realize that the right now, even if I test your blood, Amina, if I give it for some checkup, we'll realize that there are small fragments or traces of fertilizer in it. That's a very scary thing. How did fertilizer get in your blood, or how did even plastic get inside your blood? That happens because we're using lots and lots of fertilizers and carelessly. Start using from here. Ion, read from here by definition. Ayan,
By definition, a pesticide is a harmful substance. If they're not used with care, some pesticides can do a lot of damage to the environment. For example, DDT is a pesticide that kills insects. It is persistent insecticide, which means that it does not break down, but remains in the bodies of the insects or in the soil. When a bird or other organism eats the insects, they eat the DDT too. The DDT stays inside their bodies each time they eat an insect. More DDT accumulates in their tissues. If a bird of prey eats the insect-eating bird, it too begins to accumulate DDT. Birds and other animals near the ends of the food chain can build up very large concentrations of DDT in their bodies.
all right. Now, Amina, continue.
Okay. Unfortunately, as well as being persistent, DDT is also non-specific. This means that it not only harms the insects it is meant to kill, but it also harms the other living things. In high concentration, it is very harmful to birds, for example. In Britain, it affects the breeding success of peregrine falcons by
Peregrine,
making the
peregrine.
peregrine falcons by making their egg shell very weak, so that they very rarely hatched. The peregrine falcon population dropped very rapidly. Once it was realized that DDT was doing so much harm, its use in Britain was stopped. Now, DDT is banned in some parts of the world. However, it is still used in many developing countries because without it, insects would be such a problem that more people would starve or die of disease like malaria. Other insecticides needs to be developed which are as cheap and efficient as DDT but that do not harm other living organisms.
All right, stop. Now, the problem is they were banned after we saw the effects, and they caused irreversible damage. And DDT is not even a big problem. There are lots and lots of chemicals out there, especially things like PTFE. And we also have other stuff such as uh, in the atmosphere we have CFC, but PTFE, PFOA, these guys are a big problem. Now, let's go to the whiteboard. And can you see the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Now we'll look at this. Now, Amina, can you tell me what do you understand from all of this?
That pesticides are harmful and like DDT, like mentioned, it caused a lot of harm, and then they need to find other um, options which are less harmful.
But look, that's not the main point they were trying to convey. They do write a lot about the irrelevant point, that is that DDT is harmful. That's obvious. But how does it become harmful? That's a big question. There's a word given here which about that is accumulates. And I'm shocked they didn't even use bioaccumulate here. So no no disrespect to the writer, but let's talk about it. All right. We'll look at a few things. Bioaccumulation. Why is DDT harmful? Not just it is harmful, that's obvious, but why is it harmful? Next thing is we look at connection to food chain. Fine, that's what we're looking at. That's the main thing in your syllabus. Perhaps they mention it later, I think. No, they don't. They mention it here. Let's see. Now, this is called bioaccumulation, or this is called pollution by pesticides. Let's call it that. Start writing. The first thing before we start writing, let's look at a diagram for this. I'll show you the peregrine, which we talked about before. That these are a lot in Britain. Next thing is this one. Just a second. Just a second. Can you see the image? We have a fish and we have
Yes,
a
sir.
small fish. Three things. So these are small fish, those are big fish, that's a peregrine right there. Like, just give me a second, I have a thought. Right, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm in a all right, let's continue. Now we have the small fish, big fish, and peregrine. This is called a food chain kind of thing, because this big fish eats the small fish, and the peregrines eat the big fish when it dies. Not just one peregrine, 100, let's say 5, 6 peregrines eat the big fish after the fish dies. Let's take this one actually. Now this peregrine eats these fishes, which in turn eat these guys. We got a food chain. Perfect. Next thing is to look at how do these food chain work. Now these fishes are eating the small bacteria or the nutrients in the water, which are infected with pesticide. So let's say this water right here has pesticides in it, and especially DDT. So now the water may have very small amounts of DDT. Let's say it only has 1 units of DDT, or 1 unit per cm3. That's just an arbitrary unit. So per cm3, you have 1 unit of DDT. What happens is when these fishes they eat the stuff in the water, they get 1 unit per cm3 of DDT, right? So we'll just say we'll write 1 cm3, 1 unit per cm3. Or each fish is getting 1 unit whenever it eats about 1 cm3 of the nutrients in the water. Let's say that. Next thing, Ayan, can you tell me how many fishes does this big fish eat? Does it eat only 1 fish in its own life, or 10 fishes? How many fishes? These small ones. Amina, tell me, or Ayan, tell. Say.
1 in its whole life is the option.
How many? How many does it eat? What do you think? Does it eat 1? Does it eat 10? In its whole life, how many small fishes will it eat? Yeah.
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot. How much? Give me a number.
200.
200. Let's say 200. Right? That seems quite right. Now 200. So suddenly what happens is that this fish now has how many units? These guys had 1 unit per cm3 of DDT. But now this guy has 200 unit per cm3. Now that's a big jump, 200 times the jump. By the way,
Only
the leak
excreted out.
no, because it accumulates in the it's called bioaccumulation. So what happens is it doesn't come out. It stays in there, it sticks to their stays in their blood. Is that clear? So this accumulates. That's the word. If it was excreted, then we won't have a problem at all.
Okay.
Now the thing is the limit is only 100 unit maximum. But these cars had 1 unit, so that's fine, we thought, right? Well, let's dump 1 unit per CM2. Nobody cares because 100 unit was the legal limit. But we soon realized that because of bioaccumulation, from just from this cycle to this cycle, we had a 200 times jump. And Amina, can you tell me how many fishes, or these fishes, these tuna, do peregrines eat in their life?
20.
20. I'd say more than that. They would eat 20 in a week or in a month. They live for at least 3, 4, 5 years. So let's say 100, just to be fine. Okay. So if we jump from 100, then I'll realize that this increases by how much? 200 into 100, that's about 20,000 units per CNQ. And how much above is it from the legal limit? It's 200 times the legal limit, right? 200 times. So this is why it becomes a big problem. Now, what happens after this is these peregrines are eaten by other animals, and they also get DDT in the blood. Then eventually it also comes up to you in your food. Now, what we realize is the DDT damages the shells of these animals. Now, when these guys are going to make eggs like this, what happens is the shell is too weak and it breaks. The shell breaks before hatching. And it almost will cause, if left unchecked, it could cause an extinction of a species like peregrine and many more, which we don't even know. So I hope that's clear. Let's just write it down in terms of words. Ayan, any questions? Amin, any questions?
Nope.
So I hope you understand the main point behind this, which is bioaccumulation. Not that DDT is bad, that's obvious. All chemicals without testing are bad. So how do we write it? Let's write it over here. We'll write how are pesticides bad in terms of bioaccumulation. Now these secret meanings in this book, which you can't really find on your own, you need someone who knows the papers, and so you need a teacher. Even in school, please ask the teacher, but feel free to ask doubts in school as well, because it's important that you finish every chapter on time and to a great detail. Now start writing. How are pesticides harmful by bioaccumulation? First thing is, they are, what was the word? They are common or non-specific, right? They are non-specific. Write it here. And harm all, let's say, not just or all living things or organisms. Other than the intended pest. Next thing is, what happens is, by bioaccumulation, the amount or the dose of DDT can increase greatly from one level of food chain to the next. That's it. So example could be DDT, and harm would be weak shells of peregrine falcons. They won't ask for examples. They will only ask for you what is happening. They'll give the example in the question. So you should know it's often asked, why are the shells weak, or what is the effect of pesticides, what is bioaccumulation, and all of that. Now, next thing, finish writing this quickly.
Done.
Finished, Ayan?
Almost, sir.
Right. We looked at acid rain. We looked at all of that, right, Amina? Did we look at
Yeah.
plastic?
Plastic?
Done, sir.
No.
Plastic pollution.
No, we didn't do it.
I will do it. Right. It's a small thing. Now, the problem is, let's just say, property. Let's just say property would be non-biodegradable. Stay in environment for a long time. Next thing you should realize is fill up landfill sites. Would be releases toxins when burned. We should never burn plastic, by the way. Things like sulfur and other greenhouse gases are released into the air, which can cause uh, breathing problems. Animals, let's just say livestock, like cows, can eat plastic and choke or be harmed, let's just say. But there's nothing else on this. The big problem is that they do not biodegrade. Fine. I would like to actually do one thing. Let's separate it into food and land and water. This is for land or land pollution. Let's call it land pollution or effects on land. And we have another one which is effects on water. Effects in water, which will be same as the first one. There's one more for it as well. Fishes eat plastic and get injured, same as the livestock like cows. And another problem is they are very small particles that can enter food chains, that can bioaccumulate, same word again, and enter food chain. I hope you understand what bioaccumulate means right now. The last thing for this is they can add one more point here, release toxins into soil and when burned. So it's not only when burned, but also into soil, damaging crops. Or if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. All right, don't hesitate. Any questions?
No, sir.
The next thing we're looking at is called conservation. Amina, have you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. Ayan,
Yes, sir.
have you finished?
No, I'm writing effects of water right now.
All right. Amina, keep writing. The next thing is sustainable resources. What are these? Basically, things which are produced at the same rate as they are used up.
Done, sir.
As they're used up in the environment. Without running out. These are sustainable resources. We'll look at that again. Let's start reading from here. Wait, yeah, plastic was the next thing right here. Non-biodegradable plastic. You can eat it, they accumulate, and they fill up land side and everything. Contraceptive hormones, we'll have to look at that afterwards. I think that's not in your syllabus. Okay, this part is not in your syllabus. I'm gonna start reading. Conservation.
Conservation is the process of looking after the natural environment. Conservation attempts to maintain or increase the range of different species living in an area, known as biodiversity. We have seen that one of the greatest threats to biodiversity is the loss of habitats. Each species of living organism is adapted to live in a particular habitat. If this habitat is destroyed, then the species may have nowhere else to live and will become extinct. Tropical rainforests have a very high biodiversity compared with almost anywhere else in the world. This is one of the main reasons why people think that conserving them is so important. When tropical rainforests are cut down or burnt, the habitats of thousands of different species are destroyed.
All right. So one of the biggest threats to biodiversity is loss of habitats. Fine, we have looked at that already. Now you have water pollution, habitat destruction, air pollution. Please read all of this and memorize it. This is important. There may be things in this table which I have not given you, so read it. Let's see. There's anything here. Well, we also have damage to fishing. That's important. We have done deforestation, wetlands. Look at that one. That's important. Toxic chemicals, eutrophication. We have done this. oil spills. Look at this whole point. We have done all of that. So look at these points later again. I start from here.
Sustainable resources. People will always need to use resource. We say that a resource is sustainable if we can keep on using it and it does not run out. For example, fish in the sea could be a sustainable resource as long as we do not take so many of their, as long as so many that their populations fall to dangerously low levels. Wood for fuel could be a sustainable resource so long as we replant trees to replace the ones we cut down, or make sure that plenty of young trees are allowed to naturally grow. Unfortunately, many of the resources that we take from the earth are not sustainable. Fossil fuels are a good example of not sustainable resource.
All right. We'll start with why are fossil fuels non-renewable? Because or non-sustainable. Sustainable resources which can be removed from the environment without it running out, or which is produced at the same rate as it is removed from the environment. Why are fossil fuels non-renewable? Because they take millions of years to be formed. From dead plants and bacteria, that's all you need to know, dead plants and bacteria. I'm going to read the highlighted part only.
Fossil fuels are a good example of non-sustainable resource. These fuels, can you scroll up? These fuels were formed millions of years ago from dead plants and bacteria.
All right, okay. The next thing is, so they cannot be reduced, they cannot be replaced. Fine. Or such resources are also those that can be replaced. That's fine. Recycling glass. How do you recycle glass? Glass is made from silicon, sand, and contain chemicals like calcium oxide and sodium oxide, soda. Now, these are non-sustainable resources. So what we need to conserve these things. That is why it is important that we can conserve these things, because they cannot be basically replaced. So we must reduce the amount we're using it, and whatever we are using, we should replace it or recycle it. Now, glass should be recycled. How do we do it? Basically, melt the glass, crush it, melt it, and then form new glass objects. That's it. Any questions?
No.
The next thing we have right here is recycling plastics. Again, why are plastics a bad thing, or why should we recycle them? Because plastics are made from fossil fuel. So if fossil fuel runs out, plastics run out. So it's a unsustainable resource. Perfect. Not perfect, very bad actually. Now, if we can reuse plastic objects like such as bottles over and over again, we must. Now, there's something called fund in PFAN in Germany, where you must where bottles are sold for plastic bottles are sold for at expensive prices. So since they're expensive, they try to recycle plastics, and it actually incentivizes people to recycle it, because, well, if you give the plastic bottle back to the authorities, you'll get money for it. So that's fun. It's unrelated to the chapter, but you should know. Now, we cannot recycle them, so we should reuse them. We can also recycle paper. Why should we recycle? Because it's made from cellulose, from trees, which can be mixed with water and chemicals to form a pulp. And then this will be passed through filters to remove any other unneeded stuff, and then treat them with stuff to remove the ink. And then you can form new pages. I'll give you the definition or the process for this later. So any doubts in the recycling paper? I read the highlighted part.
Paper is made of, wait, the first part too? Okay. Paper is made of cellulose fibers from plants, usually trees. Waste paper can be mixed with water and chemicals that break down to form a pulp. This is passed through filters and remove any glue that might have been stuck to it, and then treated to remove the printing ink from it. This leaves clean cellulose fibers, which can be made into paper.
All right, perfect. Now, next thing is recycling paper does reduce the number of trees. Does or does not? Yeah. So it reduces the number of trees that have to be cut down. Yep. Okay. So you don't have to cut down as many trees. So recycling is good. Don't stop using paper because, well, a lot of students tell me that papers are made from trees and we should save trees, so don't use paper. Well, that's kind of stupid. Why? Because, well, it's not that harmful. If you want to stop something, stop fossil fuel. Because we are recycling paper at a very big, at a quite a huge rate. So paper is not a big cause of deforestation. Other things such as making furniture, making buildings and everything from wood and stuff, that's a bigger industry because you have things like timber. We look at timber in a second. Timber and log, all of those things. Now, so you can recycle paper, but there's no way to recycle fossil fuels. Recycling materials, how do you do that? Metals, not materials, metals. So metals, again, mining metals requires a lot of energy. Okay, so why are paper? Why should we let's say, why should we recycle paper? Because they're made from trees, and this reduces the number of trees that has to be cut down. So we should recycle paper. Why should we recycle metals? Because they're found in underground. That's okay, but the actual problem is that it requires a lot of energy. Where does the energy come from? The energy comes from fossil fuel, because electricity is largely being derived from fossil fuel, right? Usually from fossil fuel, right there, and damages habitat. So instead of, let's say, mining again and again, we're also running out of things like silicon. Silicon is there's a huge shortage of silicon right now. That's why electronics are getting expensive around the world. Now, so how do we recycle it? Aluminium, copper, lead, all of these are recycled about 95%. Uh, about 95% of the energy is saved. Amina, any questions?
No.
Now, sewage treatment. This is actually a bit different. Look at that. Shipment, sludge, forest, fish. Fine. So let's look at sewage treatment. Sewage treatment is a big problem. Why? Because water, even though we have Earth is 70% water, 70, I would say 73% water, I think. Okay, that's a lot of water, you'll say. Well, the problem is only from that 73%, I think, don't take me factually right now because I think it may be off. 73% is the water on Earth, but only, let's say, 10% is the drinking water. That means there's a big shortage of water. We don't have a lot of drinking water, so we should recycle it. So what will you write in the exam? Water is scarce. It's not a lot. We don't have drinking water, so we should recycle it. It's a scarce resource. Now, sewage is waste liquid. Okay, we get sewage from houses. And how do we recycle it? How do we filter it to get drinking water? So we should stop it from running into rivers. That's okay. And how do we treat it? Another thing is, I'm gonna read this part. Untreated sewages.
Untreated sewage is called raw sewage.
Raw sewage. Fine. Some of the things it contains are everything here: detergent, oil, chemicals, toilet paper, all of that. Now, raw sewage also contains bacteria, which are pathogenic, which will harm you. Pathogen means things which harm. Fine. And they can also cause eutrophication, right? How we saw. We didn't write this in the book, in the whiteboard. And it's not fertilizers with nitrates only. Add the word right here. Fertilizers with nitrates and, let's just say, fertilizer due to rain, fertilizers and sewage leach into rivers. The sewage does also causes eutrophication. Ayan, start reading from here. Trickling filter.
The liquid from the settlement tanks is sprinkled over a trickling filter bed. This is made of small stones and clinker. Many different aerobic microorganisms live on the surface of these stones. Some of them are aerobic bacteria, which feed on various nutrients in the sewage. Prototists feed on the bacteria. Fungi feed on soluble nutrients, and these microorganisms make up a complex ecosystem in the trickling filter bed.
I'm gonna read the highlighted part again.
The liquid is sprinkled over a trickling filter bed made of small stones and clinker. Many different aerobic microorganisms live on the surface of the stones. Various nutrients in the sewage, uh, aerobic bacteria feed on various nutrients in the sewage. A complex ecosystem in the trickling bed filter.
Right, so these microorganisms make a complex ecosystem. So all that's happening is basically there's a filtration bed, let's say, right, like this. A filtration bed is there, and on the filtration bed like this, what's happening is when you put this right here, the sewage, have bacteria right here. Now these bacteria feed on things like the other bacteria. They feed on let's say things which are in high quantity. Let's say fertilizers. They feed on all of this. Since we know that fertilizers or bacteria are best at decomposing things, then what we do is they pass through the filter. Bacteria and everything remains right here. So the bacteria first decompose everything in the water, and then we get water without the microorganisms in it. But there's still other stuff remaining, such as uh, you can have soil and dirt, and all of that is still there. We'll have to filter it one more time, and some other organisms will still be there. So after we do that, we trickle it through. That's fine, fine, fine. Okay, look at this. I'm gonna start reading.
The liquid is trickled onto the surface of the stones through holes in a rotation pipe. This makes sure that air gets mixed in with the liquid. The liquid trickles quite slowly through the stones, giving the microorganisms plenty of time to work on it. By the time the water drains out of the bottom of the bed, it looks clear, smells clean, contains virtually no pathogenic organisms, and can safely be allowed to run into a river or the sea.
All right. So, well, apparently, let's remove this part right here. And what happens is the water is much cleaner. Now you can't drink it, but you can still add it into the river, back into the river. It won't damage the other organisms such as it won't cause eutrophication and other animals such as fishes. That's fine. So how does the trickling filter work? Well, I'll just give it to you just a second. Trickling filter. Write in your notebook. Hurry up. Trickling filter. Finished?
Yes,
Just a
sir.
second. That's the aeration charge. There are a few things still remaining. All right. Amina, can you hear me properly?
Yeah.
Next class, we look at questions on recycling. Now, there's no point in wasting a lot of time on recycling because there's a common theme there. Unsustainable resource or raw material, the thing which it is made up of, and that is the reason why we recycle it. Next thing is, how do we recycle it? They don't really ask that, but they do ask us why do we recycle, and we look at those questions in next class. Questions on recycling, and the only thing remaining now is sustainable development, and in that the only thing important is we have, let's say, these things. Now our job is to look at how can we stop species from dying, because we are fishing a lot, we're cutting a lot of trees, and we're farming a lot. All of these can cause animals to go extinct, and our job is to make sure that doesn't happen. That involves government intervention. All right. Now, any questions? I'm gonna recap what have we studied in this class. Quick.
Yeah. So we did eutrophication, bioaccumulation, plastic pollution, and conservation. We also did sustainable resources and then trickling filter.
Trickling filter, just add over here, which is filtering water. That's it. That is the subtopic. Now, that's all for now. If you have, you'll have a worksheet in the GCR for this. Solve the questions. You'll have both MCQ and Q&A. Solve them. Talk in the group if you have any doubts, or you can message me directly on GCR or WhatsApp. That's it. Take care. Goodbye. Amina, if you have any friends who are interested in joining, please let them know.
Okay, sir. Thank you.